So, in part two of this episode with Steve Lees from the RSES, we're looking at the sort of the future of the residential market and what the model might be. So, if you didn't check out topic one, that was all about the home survey standard as it is now and the review that's going to take place around it. But it'd be really interesting to get your thoughts. Obviously, this isn't to do with the home survey future specifically in terms of the review that's coming up. But what do you think the future of the residential side of the process is? Is it looking to move to a Scottish model, with the home report side of things?
Yeah, really interesting, Matt. I think obviously home information packs were looked at in the early to late 2000s. Obviously 2010, the proposal looked like it had momentum, but it was scrapped, and that created a little bit of angst within the market. But we do look at our neighbours in Scotland around the work that they're doing and is that a potential way forward? I think overall people are we're all consumers at the end of the day, and the more upfront information that we can have to make an informed decision, the better. But this would have to be led by legislation. In my own personal experience, unless people are mandated to do it, would everybody pay to have a pre condition survey on their property unless they're asked to? There's a lot of fees involved when you're moving house. Now, some people may say, actually, and people do it, we'll provide a report that's available to purchasers. We want to be absolutely transparent because we think it will help prevent any problems further down the line. But in Scotland, obviously, it's a statutory instrument to provide a home report. Again, I think future governments will pick this up whilst they're looking at the whole home buying process, whether that's regulation of property agents or the information that's provided. You're probably aware of material information that agents have to provide at the moment as well.
Yeah.
Is this the next iteration that we some level of inspection or survey? So personally, I can definitely see the benefits. I think there are issues around the number of trained people to be able to produce that. Scotland have sort of got that into balance now, but I think we definitely have to look at the amount of trained people to do that. I looked at some research recently by some corporate firms, but also interested in some lenders that are quite proactive in encouraging people to have home surveys to protect their interest, and the take up, even when people are encouraged to do it, is around 1 in 10 people actually have a home survey. There's still a misconception that a mortgage valuation is a survey, and as we know, it isn't. There's a good chance that people may not even have a physical inspection if it goes through an automated valuation model, a drive past report, or any other form of valuation. So I think we've still got to dispel that myth that a valuation is a survey, but it's the sort of so what, is it that we need to move to a more mandated, get a survey done? There's pros and cons to it. I think the pros probably outweigh the cons, but there's a lot of work for a future government to make that common parlance in England and Wales.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting challenges you've raised there in terms of even having the personnel, number of surveyors available to potentially do the number of surveys that would be required, I suppose, because if we're currently saying it's around 10%, 20%, in terms of those regions that were discussed in the past, it was 20%, now it's closer to 10. Do we have enough people to do the other 90%, or it would never, I suppose, be 100% unless it was mandated? But I think that other challenge is how do you change that long-term perception in the market that evaluation is telling you the status of the house, and as you say many times, but no one's turning up. It's an automated model now.
And that's to protect the sort of lender's security, and there's a caveat emptor involved there as well. So I think there is an ongoing challenge and something we need to rise up to as a sector to point out that home survey protects your interest. There are conflicting people. They can be seen as a blocker in the market. I'm realistic to that, but good advice throughout the property journey. I've heard stories of people being advised to get a home survey on the day of exchange, so that they're going to sign. Did you have a survey? Should you have considered? Well, once you fall in love with the property and you're committed, it's very likely they're going to pause at that point to get a home survey and then reflect on it and potentially have to get further reports. So I think there's still an education piece to the general public that a home survey is required. It is to protect their interest. I've got no knowledge of classic cars, and if I was ever fortunate enough to buy a DB5, I don't think I'd be buying it without getting specialist advice, and that's probably the best analogy that I can give. Get a good survey, protect your interest, provide the advice that you need in order to provide it comfort when you actually turn the key and you live in that particular property.
I think it's an interesting one. It's I was imagining someone there walking around a car near the bonnet's up and they're just staring at the engine, going, "Yep, no idea. I need to get some help." Whereas in reverse, someone goes into a house and they knock on some walls, and you feel like you know a bit about it. Then, I suppose in terms of the legislatory side, in government and so on, are you aware if there's any conversations going on around potential moves to that model, having seen that rolled out in Scotland, or is
I think it's always sort of on the table. There's lots of threads involved in speeding up the whole process. So the use of data, how the conveyancing model can change, what input surveyors can add to the process. We're represented on quite a few government task force around the whole home buying and selling process, and it's sure to be raised again. I would imagine in the next Parliament, treating customers fairly, material information, as I say. I think it's a cycle, and it will become more prominent. Preventing aborted sales, etc. The old issues that we've seen year upon year. Can we tweak that? And obviously it'll depend on the government that we've got in place next month.
That'd be interesting to see the outcome, and if possibly this is going to get released just after that, so you might know the outcome by now.
It'd be interesting to see what the listeners think, depending on who's in office.
I think it's you're right. I can see the appetite for potentially moving towards something like this, having tried with the hips packs before, because it's one thing, particularly if you're on like estate agent newsletters and so on, you see the continual conversation around how do we improve transaction times and fall through rates at 30% and stuff like this. And I suppose anything that stops a shock later on, like upfront information around the quality, the sort of not quality of the house, but the risks of the house, I suppose is the best way of putting it. That will reduce fall throughs later, and also just speed up the transaction time, because you're not having to wait for other things to be booked in.
Absolutely, yeah.
Are there other ways in which you think the residential sector might change over the coming years? I know there's lots of talks around different technologies and like drones and AI and bits and pieces. Do you see that changing? How reports are done?
I think there are lots of potential changes to the market. I think we're all aware of climate change and the need to get to net zero, and residential is a massive part of that. So retrofit of properties is crucial. How we use properties, the technology as well. In the last 5 years, there's been significant advances in photovoltaic cells, ground source heat pumps, air source heat pumps, materials, roofing materials that actually generate energy, and they will continue to evolve. So our membership really need to understand the technology and how that interacts with the particular property. We've got new build with Future Home Standard, and then from a practical and survey point of view, how buildings perform. So putting insulation on the outside of an older property, does that affect the moisture and ventilation rates within the dwelling? Could that lead to unintended consequences? So definitely from that point of view, the way we build properties, modern methods of construction probably haven't taken off as we've seen, but I think government and people that build alternative houses will look at innovative ways of construction, and therefore our members obviously need to appreciate that, because when they're built, we need to understand how they perform, and if they need to be extended, how can they be done safely. So lots of changes, and again, use of technology. I think I've seen reports. I actually got a report on my property because I wanted to look at the chimney stacks and the roof coverings, and drones were deployed, photographic imagery. I'm showing my age now, Matt, but when I started, it was a Polaroid image of the front of the property. You know, some reports can contain hundreds of photographs, or why not look at embedded videos? You know, it feels like the industry is on the verge of change and innovation, and you know, probably don't know enough about it at this stage, but AI and all of that really, you know, technology of the future. It's definitely got a part to play, and it's important we keep up to speed with that.
Yeah, definitely. I think AI is going to be an interesting one. I think there's a lot of interesting AI coming through in terms of, we did an episode recently with Absola around how they use AI to identify properties that are even worth going to survey in the first place, that are likely to be suitable for solar, versus having to go out and check every single one before you can progress. So there's interesting stuff like that. On the flip side, I think there's a lot of AI for AI's sake to try and push it as a marketing type thing. So it'd be interesting to see what comes out that's of use.
Yeah.
But it's very good.
Sorry, Matt.
I was going to say the other thing you said, I think it would be, and I touched on this before actually in the marketing episode, but around is exactly as you say, putting things like videos in reports. I think gone are the days where it's, do we include photos or not? The photos give a really good explanation to customers as to what you're looking at where, and a video just makes that even easier to talk through and understand where something is. So
yeah, we all consume information in different ways. I'm very visual. Some people, audio works for them. Some people like to, not one for me, but like to read a 100-page manual about how to build or repair their lawnmower on more. Let's go and have a look on Google and YouTube and explain it to me that way. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunities around there. Ultimately, we want to make sure that the customer's getting the correct experience, but the information provided to them is accurate and can be clearly interpreted. So yeah, there's plenty of tools that are being used now, and I'm sure will continue to evolve as we go forward.
Yeah, definitely. I like to think, however you learn, whether it's the manual or the video, you still end up with leftover pieces if you're building an IKEA.
yeah, quite right. Yeah, I've got a shed full of those. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for covering that. If you're interested and want to tune in for part 3, we're going to discuss, I suppose, retrofit and the opportunities that are coming up there.